The Newsagents.
It is a new era, a brand new world on the green benches of Prime Minister's questions. For the first time in 14 years, you have a Labour Prime Minister answering the questions, and you have an opposition leader in Rishi Sunak who's, well, willing to make a joke.
And I also join with the Prime Minister in his warm words about our Olympic athletes. I've no doubt that after years of training, focus and dedication, they'll bring back many gold medals. Although, to be honest, I'm probably not the first person they want to hear advice from on how to win. But
it's self-deprecation and it suits him. It is a new style, a new tone, even a new content that focus very much on how the two parties would work together on Ukraine. But last night was a different story. Last night, Keir Starmer faced the first rebellion of his premiership, and he took very swift action with the 7 rebels. Welcome to the Newsagents. It's Emily.
And it's John in Southampton.
And I guess if everything looked like peace and calm had broken out on the green benches today, it was a very different story last night, because Keir Starmer faced the first rebellion of his premiership, and his response was brutal. It was an amendment brought by the SNP leader in Westminster, Stephen Flynn. Greatly reduced number of SNP members now, as you know. But this amendment was brought to call to an end to the cap on child benefits after 2 children. And it was never a vote that Keir Starmer was going to lose. He's got a whopping majority. It passed with 363 votes. But 7 on his own side voted with the SNP against the Labour Party, and they swiftly found themselves dispatched. They've lost the whip.
So the interesting thing is that I suspect today in the Commons there were an awful lot of people on the Labour benches who would like to see the 2-child cap on child benefit lifted, and they want it to be lifted. But let's do practical politics here. It was never in the Labour manifesto that that is what Labour was going to do. Labour said they would look into it and at some future point. The whole pitch to the electorate was, we're not going to promise what we can't afford and we haven't properly costed. So given that, and given that this was the King's speech, if you are the Whip's office and you've got 7 people who are going to vote against the King's speech, which is absolutely fundamental, it would be like voting against a vote of confidence in the government, it would be like voting against the budget. These are essential things. It's not just a minor little rebellion over the 3rd reading of something or other. This is the King's speech. I don't think that, frankly, I tell you what, if he hadn't have suspended them, we would have been saying today instead, why is Keir Starmer so weak? Surely they should have had the whip withdrawn from them as a result of what they did.
Yeah, it's worth saying that one of those 7, Zara Sultana, is going to be coming on and speaking to us on the Newsagents in a matter of minutes. And so we'll get her full side of the story. But I think what we're really talking about here is the shape of the battles that Keir Starmer is prepared to have with his own party. And I guess this goes back to the bigger question that we asked before the election, which is big majority, good or bad. He's come in with a majority of more than 200. And I guess the question is, if they thought it was if they thought it was going to damage their own party, the party of government, would they have gone there? Probably not, or maybe not all 7 of them. But because they think that this is a party with latitude, with numbers, with room, with time, they can vote with their conscience. And Keir Starmer is basically in the position of saying, you can do that if you want. I reserve the right to remove you from my party. And I think that is a really interesting place for him to go, because we've always talked about the fact that Starmer kind of sometimes sounds a bit dithering, sometimes sounds a bit unsure, sometimes fluffs his lines in PMQs, doesn't always get the end of the sentence or land the joke well, but actually he's ruthless, right? We've seen it before. He's basically said, you're out. And I'd be really interested to know if is he having regrets today? Is he thinking that was too harsh? Some people in his party calling him a control freak. You know, where does this go from here? He clearly thinks he can afford to do it, and it's the only thing he could afford to do.
And we talked in the election about how Francis Pym, when he was Margaret Thatcher's chief whip, had warned about the dangers of a big landslide victory ahead of the 83 election. She got that big landslide victory. Because he said it's just going to embolden people to be naughty. And people being naughty on the backbenches is what you don't want if you are the chief whip. And so I think Keir Starmer kind of equally, just as the Labour backbenchers felt emboldened last night, he equally felt bold enough to say, yeah, fine, OK, you're out. And that's the price you're going to pay. Because what he doesn't want is to have a running saw that every time there is a vote, there will be a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen. It could be up to 100 who think, you know what, I don't need to worry about supporting the government. I have got the latitude to do what I want to do. And I don't think Keir Starmer wants that idea to take hold. What I do think is interesting, and we had, when you were away in Milwaukee last week, Maitlis, we had Bridget Phillipson on, the education secretary.
Yeah.
And I questioned her a lot on this whole question of the 2-child cap. And she wouldn't even say it was desirable, even though I pressed her to say it would be desirable to be able to lift it. It's clearly what they think. It is just something that is going to be a year or 2 years down the line. And I thought there was sort of something slight. Look, I understand the principle involved of why those 7 MPs voted the way they did. But there was something slightly performative about it, given that it was not anywhere in the manifesto that is what Labour would do.
Yes and no. OK, so we've talked about the politics of this. Let's talk about the policy itself, because it was brought in under George Osborne in 2015. I was in the hall. I remember the moment where he produced it. And actually, even then, it had a slight ring of the kind of Thatcher milk snatcher to it. It was considered an unpleasant policy because it essentially penalised women or penalised families for having more than 2 children. Now, Osborne wouldn't see it like that. Successive Tory governments wouldn't see it like that. They'd say, no, all we're saying is we're not going to give you benefits. You have as many kids as you want, but the state is not going to pay you past number 2. But it's still, I think, had a slightly nasty party ring to it. And I remember when Keir Starmer a year ago said he wouldn't be scrapping it. And I actually talked to Tony Blair about it. I said, I found that really, why would the Labour Party be doing that? Why would they be holding on to it? And the sense I think I got at the time was you don't really need to say what you're doing. You don't really need to spell it out until you see the money, all the rest of it. But frankly, Keir Starmer has committed himself to a policy that virtually everyone in his party doesn't like. So there is something, let's not be, disingenuous about this. There is something really weird about carrying on a Tory policy from the austerity years of George Osborne and saying nothing to see here, it's absolutely fine. It isn't a Labour policy. It is a weird thing to keep. And yes, it would cost some money to get rid of. I think it would cost £3.5 billion a year. That there are so many, many poverty action groups who will tell you that this is the single most beneficial thing that any party, any government could do to lift vast numbers of children out of poverty. So you are kind of left scratching your head saying, well, why isn't the Labour Party the party that's doing this then?
Of course, but I think that Keir Starmer, the whole argument that he made to the British people is that, frankly, I do want to build a new Jerusalem, but I can't do it tomorrow. It's going to take maybe a week, maybe months, maybe a couple of years, maybe 2 terms, which is what he said, this 10-year idea of renewal. I'm sure it is near the top of what he wants to pledge. But, if he gave ground on that $3.5 billion, then they'll say, well, what about 0.7% of GDP spent on international aid? Because that would be great. Also, given the state of the world, you could say, well, you've got to have 0.7% of GDP spent on overseas aid. And what about 2.5% spent on defence, given how dangerous the planet has become? And so I kind of think that Keir Starmer is on a hiding to nothing. If he gives in on one, and I agree with you totally, I think that the 2-child cap is, as a piece of policy, is unfair and has damaged an awful lot of families and would be a huge move towards helping child poverty, and that any progressive party would want to believe in that. But it just can't be done overnight. And I think that's the kind of distinction. And I think that the left of the Labour Party clearly want him to go more quickly. And Starmer is saying, no, I'm staying true to the word that I gave the British people.
Yeah. I mean, look, when it comes down to the numbers, I think 1.6 million children live in families affected by the cap. This is already grown by 100,000 on last year. So I hear you, but I also think that, I hate the slippery slope argument. I think sometimes you just do the thing. Sometimes you just get on and do the thing. And if people ask you about the other thing, the defence spending or the international aid or, the kind of cleaning up the sewers or the beaches, I get it. Of course, there will always be a lot of people asking you for money in your position as Prime Minister. I think this would have been a particularly easy one to do. But I think the mitigating thing for Keir Starmer, funnily enough, is that he has already signalled. He already signalled on Monday that he was close to a shift. So I think if they hadn't rebelled, we probably would have seen something pretty quickly come around that would have taken the cap off. They may just have pushed that backwards because he's now got to make it all about party discipline and not look as if he's being pushed around by the 7 MPs who are now on the outside of his party. I guess that is the problem. It's probably all got a lot more complicated to end this now.
And let's hear now from Stephen Flynn, the leader of the SNP at Westminster, who clearly wanted to make hay on this in the Commons today.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, may I again warmly congratulate the Prime Minister on ending Tory rule. In his campaign to do so, he was, of course, They're too close for comfort now. They're too close for comfort. In his campaign to do so, Mr. Speaker, he was, of course, joined by Gordon Brown. And just 5 days before the general election in Scotland, on the front page of the Daily Record, Gordon Brown instructed voters to vote Labour to end child poverty. Yet last night, Labour MPs from Scotland were instructed to retain the 2-child cap, which forces children into poverty. So, Prime Minister, what changed?
I'm glad he mentioned Gordon Brown because the last Labour government lifted millions of children out of something we're very, very proud of. And this government will approach the question with the same vigour. With our new task force, already we've taken steps, breakfast clubs, abolishing no-fault evictions, decent home standard.
Order.
I have to say, we were all so eager with anticipation for the first Prime Minister's questions and how would Rishi Sunak approach it. It was kind of slightly dull and pedestrian, dare I say, apart from Stephen Flynn kind of making that point on child poverty, and you heard Keir Starmer's retort to it. I hope they're not going to all be nice to each other. I mean, it's great to have consensual politics, but it's really crap for making good podcasts.
Do you know what? It's so funny because there was something just heartwarming about the whole thing. Rishi Sunak looks so much more comfortable as leader of the opposition, like he's actually finally enjoying his own life for the first time in sort of several years, and offering Keir Starmer help on helping Ukraine. And you're just in this brave new world where the Conservative leader is working with the Labour leader to offer help to the Ukrainian president with the help of the German Chancellor. And you're like, oh my God, imagine if this was actually the template for how you solved the world's problems. So yeah, I'm sorry if it makes a more boring podcast, but actually it's a genuinely new and refreshing and extraordinary place to be, where you've got people who have worked out that collectively they can sort of end the world's ills more helpfully by working together.
I'm sure Kamala and Donald will be looking at that template and thinking, no, we're not going to go there. In a moment, Zara Sultana, one of the Labour MPs who rebelled last night, one of those Labour MPs who has now lost the whip.
Well, joining us now, Zara Sultana, MP for Coventry South, and newly, as of last night, whipless. Zara, what happened last night? When did you know?
So I was informed about half an hour after the vote, and this was after the final vote, which took place just before 8 o'clock, I think. And as I was heading home, I just looked at my emails as I normally do, and that's where I saw the email from the Chief Whip.
Right. So no conversation with Keir Starmer, nothing with Pat McFadden, just
No.
an email saying, what did it say?
It basically just informs you that as you have voted against the party whip, the whip has been suspended, and it basically just outlines what that involves, and it included this would be for 6 months and then it would be reviewed. So it's quite long, but you process the key bits of information basically.
And what did you do then?
I then put out a statement saying that I'd been notified by the Chief Whip and the Labour leadership that because I voted to scrap the two-child benefit cap, the whip had been withdrawn from me.
Was this a conversation you'd had with the Chief Whip beforehand? Did he know
I
that you
had
were going to...
no conversations with anyone. No one had spoken to me all day from the Whip's office or the Labour leadership about the vote. And I think this speaks to a wider culture around duty of care, which I feel is severely lacking. Over the course of the general election, I had a case with the police under Operation Bridger, and I notified the Labour leadership about this, and I got nothing. No one checked in, no one wanted to kind of find out what was going on.
Can you explain that? What was that?
So it's I can't go into too much detail, but it's around security, MP security. So you notify the local police force, and it's under the name Operation Bridger, which is related to MP security.
So I guess stepping back, your party could look at you and say, oh, come on, that's a bit rich. You know, you knew what your party line was. You knew what the newly elected Prime Minister was asking. You can't suddenly call it a duty of care if you throw all that out the window and rebel.
I don't agree with that. I think the vote last night can't be seen in isolation from how MPs are treated, and I think there's a wider conversation about how authoritarian or heavy-handed withdrawing the whip was. But just adding to the point that I made yesterday, I've been trying to have conversations with the party for a long time, and there's cases where simply trying to get a bigger office so I can pray in, I haven't had a response in 2.5 years. Keir Starmer hasn't spoken to me in 2.5 years. So in terms of conversations and creating a healthy dialogue within the party where you can healthily, in a healthy way, debate and have different opinions, that culture is missing within the party.
Are you calling Keir Starmer authoritarian?
I'm calling a culture that is in the party, and yesterday's vote shows that MPs who might have a slightly different opinion. Actually, I take that back. Most of the PLP, in fact, everyone in the PLP in the Parliamentary Labour Party that I've spoken to wants to scrap the cap. Keir Starmer himself wants to scrap the two-child benefit cap. In fact, that was part of his 2020 leadership bid. This is also the policy of 11 affiliated trade unions to the Labour Party, the TUC, Gordon Brown. I could go on. So there is widespread consensus on this issue. But yesterday, clearly, the Labour leadership felt that voting in that way was unacceptable.
But isn't that what makes it so odd? That he had already made clear on Monday that he was softening his position. As you say, the whole party is moving towards a position of scrapping it. Wouldn't it have been worth just waiting to find out what the plan was?
I find waiting quite difficult when I know that 10,000 children in my constituency live in poverty, when 4.3 million children across the country live in poverty, and a measure like this could immediately alleviate 330,000. And a single day that continues where those kids continue to live in poverty is a day too long. So we can act, and we should act now rather than wait for some point in the future. If we are moving in that direction, why not make an announcement today or before the amendment to say we are committing to scrapping the two-child benefit cap, and we can fund that because we are going to tax the very richest in our society to be able to do so.
Do you really think Keir Starmer doesn't care about children in poverty? As a Labour MP, do you genuinely think that's not a priority for him?
I believe Keir Starmer cares about children in poverty. I believe everyone in the Labour Party cares about children in poverty. If the Labour Party has a moral mission, it must be to eradicate child poverty. But we need actions. And so while I welcome the introduction of an anti-poverty task force, the evidence is already there. Think tanks anti-poverty charities, campaigners, they've all got the evidence which says the key driver of child poverty in this country is the two-child benefit cap. So you don't need to continue, research in this issue. There's widespread research on this already.
I guess there are some in your party who are just saying, look, this is a victory for the SNP. Steve Flynn is a highly wily, smart operator who knew exactly what he was doing by bringing that amendment, and he was trying to sow division within the Labour ranks, and he's done it.
I don't believe that. I'm not in Parliament to play games, to play factional games. For me, this is about child poverty, and we can't lose sight of what is a real crisis in our country. And I made it clear that I would vote for any selected amendment that called for the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap, and any kind of accusation that says this is games and this is people playing games, I have to call out, because for me...
to be fair, he hasn't said it's games, Keir Starmer. He's said it costs $3.5 billion, we will do it, we need to have the money to be able to do that, and I've promised fiscal responsibility before anything else. That's all again.
But if fiscal responsibility means that we're okay with 330,000 kids being in avoidable poverty, then we need to look at the balance sheets again, because there are policies that you can adopt, like a 2% wealth tax on assets over 10 million. You could raise £24 billion. You could equalise capital gains with income rate thresholds. You could raise 12 billion. So the money is there. It's a matter of political will.
So you knew that was his position. You knew it was in the manifesto that he would...
Well, the manifesto itself actually said that the party is committing to reviewing universal credit and having an ambitious strategy on eradicating child poverty. And in that ambitious strategy would involve, obviously, scrapping the two-child benefit cap, which is a key driver of child poverty in the country.
I guess all I'm asking is, would you now consider being an independent? You know, you've lost the whip for 6 months, right? Maybe you'll find that actually that is a place that suits you more. If you think that the party's not moving fast enough and you've made a very cohesive argument for why they're not, maybe you can do more on the outside.
I joined the Labour Party as a 17-year-old who was angry at the coalition government, who attacked our communities, who tripled tuition fees, who decimated our public services. And I looked to the Labour Party as a party of social justice and equality. I have been a Labour Party member all this time. I've been a community organiser for the Labour Party. I got re-elected as a Labour Party MP. So for me, the key issue is to push the party in a direction which is delivering on its mandate for change, which is what the country's crying out for. And I hope that going through this process, we'll see the whip restored. But in that time, I will continue to maintain my principles and speaking up about the issues that I care about and that my constituents are deeply affected by.
I mean, if it changes next week, will you think, oh, what a stupid time to be sitting outside the party when I could actually be doing more inside?
If it changes next week, I would absolutely welcome that, because that means kids will not be sleeping on empty stomachs and going to school hungry and then coming home to cold homes and their health and well-being and so much more affected. I would absolutely welcome that. I would look to the whip being restored, but the priority is absolutely making sure that child poverty is a thing of the past in this country.
And if the policy is still the same in 6 months' time when you're offered the whip back, will you take it?
I would absolutely take the whip back and continue championing the calls to scrap the two-child benefit cap. That won't stop.
Zara Sultana, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's fair to say there is huge excitement among Democratic Party circles in the US over Kamala Harris taking over the top of the ticket and being now the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. Money has been flowing in. A new poll puts her 2 points ahead of Donald Trump in a nationwide poll. But it's not all sunshine. She has faced some serious criticism from the most serious quarter.
You know, many people in this country say, Prime Minister, that we have a problem electing women, and that they extend that to say conservatives will never elect women. Yet you're proof that women can come to power in your country. Of course, Maggie Thatcher is proof of that. Do you think Americans have a problem with women in power?
No, I don't. I think there have been some brilliant American women in politics, but I don't think Kamala Harris is one of them. She was given the specific job of sorting out immigration on the southern border, it is now at crisis point. She has not delivered as vice president, and she's got the job now because of the crazy situation with President Biden retiring at the last minute, even though everybody in America knew that he was not up to the job. So she has got the job. She's got the nomination, or she's about to get the nomination, in what is a very, very bizarre scenario. What I hate is identity politics. We shouldn't care if somebody is an ethnic minority. We shouldn't care if they're a woman. We should be caring about, can they do the job? And she is not proven as vice president she can do the job. And I think we are going to see a situation similar to what we saw in the UK. I think there will be a landslide against the incumbent party because they have not delivered for the American people.
That commentator there making plenty of rational Republican talking points. The only problem is that that commentator was our Liz Truss, who, as we know, has the Aston in America. Liz Truss, UK Prime Minister, September 2022 to October 2022. There is a glass house. There is somebody throwing very, very large stones.
I wonder whether she knows about what it is not to deliver and why there might have been a landslide against the incumbents. Oh, who was the Prime Minister who crashed the economy in her brief tenure in number 10 Downing Street? Honestly, the brass neck of Liz Truss, the lack of shame or remorse is something that is remarkable. I'm sure psychologists will be doing studies on this for years to come.
We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.